only 13 overs were possible on the opening day of the Gabba test between India and Australia. Well, the series is currently level at 1-1. Now, if we talk about the weather forecast of the day 2 and day 3 of the Brisbane test, it's still pretty much decent. But then on day 4, the penultimate day of the test, and day 5, the final day, the weather forecast isn't promising at all. So assuming the Brisbane test ends in a draw and the series remains level at 1-1, how would it impact both India and Australia's chances as far as a possible spot in the World Test Championship final is concerned? Well, let's take a look at the possible scenarios. Well, before we get to it, this is the WTC latest standings, with South Africa currently occupying the pole position with a total of 6 wins, only 1 draw, 3 losses, a total of 76 points, and a percentage of points earned is 63.33. Australia, the reigning WTC champions, are currently at the 2nd spot, while India are 3rd and Sri Lanka are at the 4th position. And these are the only 4 teams that are currently in the reckoning for a possible place in the World Test Championship final. But now, as always, as it has been a drill with these WTC scenarios videos, let's just make a couple of assumptions. And here, first one is that the Brisbane test in Gabba is a draw between India and Australia, which means the series remains tied at 1-1, and that's an assumption that we are taking, the first and the foremost one. And secondly, as always, as it has been a drill, that no further slow over rate deductions are seen, not just in the Border Gavaskar Trophy, but also in the 2-match series between Pakistan and South Africa and Australia versus Sri Lanka. That's going to take place in January and February 2025. Now, let's just assume that the BGT is tied 1-1 after the 3rd test in Brisbane. Now, this would mean that India would have a total of 2 matches remaining, both against Australia, one at the iconic Melbourne Cricket Ground and the final one at the renowned SCG, that is the Sydney Cricket Ground. And if India win both those matches, then their best possible finish in terms of the percentage of points earned would be 60.53, and that would be enough for them to seal a place in their 3rd consecutive World Test Championship final. Well, moving on, what if BGT is a 2-2 draw? And this is basically assuming after the Gabba test is a draw, and it's one of the first and the foremost assumptions that we had taken in the earlier slides. And if we move on to it, what if BGT is a 2-2 draw? Then India would need multiple favors from not just Pakistan but from Sri Lanka too. And how in case of Pakistan, for that matter? They would need Pakistan to defeat or even outclass South Africa 2-0, irrespective of the result of the 2-match series between Australia and Sri Lanka. But if South Africa defeat Pakistan 2-0, then they would want Sri Lanka to hammer Australia 2-0, so that India can secure a place in the World Test Championship final of 2029 that's going to take place at the Mecca of cricket in June 2025. So yes, that in a way would mean that if BGT is a 2-2 draw, in a nutshell, India's fate would not be in their own hands. But if India lose the BGT 3-1, then they will be out of the competition. They will be eliminated. Well, moving on, assuming BGT is 1-1 after the 3rd test, and now we are going to talk about Australia's possible scenarios. Then Australia will have a total of 4 matches remaining, 2 against India, MCG and SCG, and 2 against Sri Lanka. That's going to be a final away series for Australia in this WTC cycle. And if Australia win those 4 matches, all their remaining 4 matches, assuming Gabba is a draw, then Australia's best possible finish in terms of the percentage of points earned would be 67.54, and that would be enough for them to seal a place in the WTC final, their 2nd consecutive WTC final, if that all it happens. Now, What if BGT is a 2-2 draw? And this, once again, we are talking about Australia's possible scenarios. Then Australia would need at least a win versus Sri Lanka, which means that they would have to draw the away series against Sri Lanka 1-0, assuming the BGT is a 2-2 draw. And if they are really able to do that, then they would qualify for the WTC final. But what if Australia lose the BGT 3-1? Now, in case of India, if they lose BGT 3-1, they would be eliminated. But in case of Australia, if they lose it, then that's not going to be the case. They would still be a little far away from the elimination, only if they manage to beat Sri Lanka 2-0 in the difficult goal conditions, and especially they'll have to counter the likes of Prabhat Jayasuriya too, and they would need favor from Pakistan. And what's the kind of favor that they would need from them? They would want the Shan Masood led side to defeat South Africa 2-0. And if these two scenarios really come true, that Australia defeats Sri Lanka 2-0 and Pakistan outclass South Africa 2-0, then Australia will qualify for the WTC final of 2025. Now, what about South Africa? Where do they currently stand? Apart from the fact that they are currently at the top spot in the WTC standings, they have a total of 2 matches remaining, both against Pakistan, a final home series for them in this WTC cycle of 2023 until 2025, and their best possible finish in terms of the percentage of points earned would be 69.44, and that would be enough for them to seal a place in the WTC final. But even if they lose one of the matches against Pakistan, let's say, they lose one and they win one, they would still qualify for the WTC final. So which means that they need at least a win to assure themselves a place in their maiden WTC final. Now, what are the best possible scenarios for Sri Lanka, the last team that is actually in the reckoning for a place in the World Test Championship final? They must beat Australia 2-0. They must hope that either India or Australia win the BGT 3-1, that it should not be a tie, it should not be a draw, that either India or Australia win it 3-1 and Pakistan defeat South Africa 2-0. If one of the scenarios doesn't really come true with all the 3 things that have been mentioned here, then Sri Lanka would be eliminated from the competition. So, well, the race for the WTC final spot is actually a little thrilling one as far as, all the 4 teams are concerned. India in a must-win situation, similar can be said about Sri Lanka, but South Africa is the only team that are really hot favorites to reach the WTC final as far as their current positioning goes. They just need one more win, and Australia, on the other hand, they currently have momentum in their hand. After they defeated India in the Adelaide ping ball test, they do have the momentum and they would want to carry it and at the very same time win the BGT. What do you think about the latest WTC scenarios, and do you think that can India make a comeback in the BGT and possibly win 3-1? You can let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe to Sports Today for all the exciting updates and analysis from the sporting world. Until then, it's Siddharth Gulati saying goodbye.